Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you had a good break. My name's Lynette Brady and I'm the Director of Anti-Piracy Operations based out of London. We like to think of ourselves as a truly global team. We're headquartered out of London. We have another operational station in Vilnius, which is in Lithuania. We also have a CSM team in Boise, Idaho. Idaho, and we also have regional staff in Portland and LA. I had been thinking about what interesting fact to give you, but I didn't think my shopping habit, love of tequila, and my addiction to the Real Housewife franchise was actually that interesting. So with that said, I'm actually going to take some time out to introduce, I like to think of them as the dynamic duo. I don't know if they're going to take that as a compliment, but I truly do mean that as a compliment. I've had the great pleasure of seeing both of them speak at a number of occasions at forums, not just in the US, but also in the UK. They took the time out of their day yesterday to actually spend some time with the team in Boise, in the Boise office, and I just took a moment out to just write some words down that came to me as they were speaking. I know it sounds a bit... There aren't any awards, I'm not giving awards out. So, you know, WWE is a truly global brand, and that really struck me as I started to go through some of the stats. You know, organizations talk about being diverse, but truly global. And, you know, that was really pretty amazing to the team as well, to know how their effort manifests in, you know, basically in the deliverables that WWE produce. It's phenomenal with, as I said, a vast global reach. It's truly diverse, and it's groundbreaking. And the words that I would actually use to describe our two speakers are knowledgeable, evangelical, passionate, and awesome. Please welcome Matt and Lauren.
Thank you for that. Well, that was quite an introduction. Hope we live up to that. Thank you for that. Evangelical, that is a new one for me. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for being here and for being excited to hear about WWE. I'm standing here and not sitting because I get excited talking about WWE, and I need to stand to be excited. It just doesn't work for me to sit in a lounge chair. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about our IP team. So when you hear about everything that we're doing, you'll understand that this is from the hard work of really Matt and me. It is the two of us. I'm the SVP in charge of the IP group. Matt is VP of Intellectual Property. We work together closely. Our offices are literally next door to each other, so we can scream to each other all day long. And we have two paralegals that report to us. And that's it. And we wouldn't be able to do anything that we do without the support of the right vendors. And obviously, that's one of the reasons why we're here. Mark Monitor, Clarivate, they've been our vendors for nearly 20 years. And we couldn't do what we do unless we had them at our side. Now, when we talk about WWE, before I started, I didn't know what WWE was. I knew it was some wrestling program that was on TV, and I didn't love it so much. I just knew it was a bunch of wrestlers in the ring, and the show was over, and that would be that. And I had no idea at the time that it was, and I know I'm not surprising anybody, a scripted show. I had no idea that they traveled every single week, that there was no off-season, that it was just a monstrous event, that every single week was a 2-hour show. So if you think about a scripted event, that means you have a creative writing team. When they travel, that means you have an immigration department because we travel worldwide. When we travel, that means you also have a department that has to handle the live events and the venue agreements. And when they travel and they create new tag teams, and because it's a storyline driven, that means there's a ton of IP. And everything then that is produced as a result of these live shows, that's content, that's copyrighted work, that then is Mac's headache afterwards. So for those of you who might not know about WWE, we wanted to show a little bit of an introduction video as to what it is and what we do.
WWE.
WWE. WWE.
WWE. 3 little letters, but one extraordinary experience.
I had the best time there.
I went out there and I just got caught up.
The energy in this place is unbelievable.
It's more than this.
WWE is the #1 sports channel on YouTube. WWE has been a major topic in all forms of social media.
We are being seen all over the world. Well, you better get ready for WrestleMania.
WrestleMania.
What's up, Kids' Choice Award?
The family.
My wife is Maurice. She is the Mrs. You get it? Ms. and Mrs.
And even more than a spectacle, we are family, friends, heroes. We are a community.
Like when I close my eyes and don't even care if anyone sees me dancing. Like I can fly and don't even think of touching the ground. Like a heartbeat skip, like an open page, like a one-way trip on an aeroplane.
I'm never gonna forget this day.
This was my best day ever.
Brand new.
We are WWE.
So if I've converted anybody to be a WWE fan, my job is done, I can leave. So at our core, we have 4 main focuses of the company. The first one is we are a televised show, as I thought before I started working there. We have 4 to 5 shows a week. They are live. Most of those shows are live each week. And we are broadcast, as you saw in the video, in over 180 countries, translated into over 28, 30 languages. That is a lot of content to be developing. That is a lot of work that it goes into creating this show that is a 2 or 3 hour show each week, 4 or 5 of them. So you can imagine, not just are we creating content in terms of the footage, but we have photographers that are ringside. We come away from every single show with at least a few thousand photos that we then have in our art bank and have as copyrighted footage and have for our licensees to use later on. And so we have to crop them and tag them and flag them and index them so that our licensees could then pick up the one that has John Cena versus The Rock in this match and that match. This is a ton of work that goes into this every single week. And this is our bread and butter. It's the live show, no doubt about it. The second bread and butter for the company is our WWE network. It started in February 2014. It's our OTT content delivery system. And it is where we house most of our footage now. It is the biggest focus of the company, and it is what drives our company to succeed. We have about 1.8 million subscribers now, and it's $9.99 a month. And with that $9.99 a month, you get all the pay-per-views. And I'm not trying to really sell WWE to you. I'm trying to explain why we're up here and then why the story that we're going to tell tells. But you get all the pay-per-views. You get all of our original content that we're creating each week, all these other shows, these documentary shows that we create. We also have amassed hundreds of thousands of hours of library footage from the 50, 60 years that WWE's been in existence. In addition, we've also been acquiring libraries over time. If anybody is a WWE historian, you'll know that we actually kind of bought up all the promotions that were around us at the time. Quick side note as a history, started out as a very local wrestling promotion in gymnasiums and little auditoriums. And in the Northeast, there'd be one. In the Southeast, there'd be one. Well, WWE, under the guise of Vince McMahon, has now taken it not just nationwide. We've bought up all of our competitors. We're now global. And so it's become something where we now have all of their libraries as part of our network as well. And it's now our copyrighted works to now also protect. The third arm, digital media. We have the WWE.com, we have obviously the network, but we're also all over social media. We have a very vibrant YouTube channel, and you'll see the numbers in the next minute. We put footage up there specifically for YouTube, not just for our shows. So we want to go where our fans are at all times and give them the kind of content they would expect to see on those platforms. The fourth arm is home entertainment. DVDs for movies, DVDs for compilations of our footage, as well as music and books that we publish. Let me go back, sorry. The second main arm is live events. As you saw in the video, that is the big thing. Everybody, we want to get people in seats. We want to make them happy. We want to sell our product at those live events. And it's live every week, no off season. I can't stress that enough because there's no downtime for us ever. We have live events, not just the pay-per-views, 12 to 13, 14 per year, but every week is also a live event or 2 or 3. It culminates in what we like to think of as our Super Bowl event, which is WrestleMania, and I'll talk in very big detail about that later on. But at every live event, we seize bootleg merchandise, we sell legitimate merchandise, we film, we photograph. We have more than 500 live events per year. You have to think of the astronomical movement that goes into taking about 250 talent and wrestlers, we call them talent, and moving them around the country and around the world. We have an entire immigration department. We have a travel department within the company to make all of this big, huge juggernaut machine work and move. And all you know is that someone's coming out of a ring from backstage and going in the ring and having a match. Well, that match, as I said, was scripted, but it also physically was laid out so that no one's getting hurt. They know what they're going to do, sure, but that doesn't mean they're not hitting the mat and getting hurt and getting injured, and you have to make sure you do it the right way. So the whole week, they're leading up and figuring out how to do that with each other. The next big arm, and one of the arms that I am most directly involved in, is consumer products. We have over 200 licensees worldwide. Blue chip partners like Mattel, Take-Two video games, New Era tops, headwear. We have Foot Locker, Adidas. We now have ice cream for With Good Humor. Who would have thunk it? But I work to negotiate and draft those license agreements because I also handle the IP. It was a natural extension because what do you do after you own it? You license it out. That's where you make the money. And the fourth arm is WWE Studios. That's kind of a separate arm of the company. We produce and we distribute full-length feature films like The Call, The Marine, if you've heard of them. We started off promoting our wrestlers in them, and they were supposed to be the main focus of the movies. The business model has changed throughout the years where we are sometimes co-financing and just distributing them, but still our talent do have some roles in the movies. But mostly we really just want to promote good films. WWE by the numbers, because they are pretty substantial. 1.69 million of subscribers for our network. Those are people that have said, I like what you have on there. I like the library. I like the pay-per-views. I like the original content you're creating. And I'm interested in going on your website and going on the apps and seeing what you have to offer every month. We have over 1,500 hours of content that's created in 180 countries and 20 languages. But we have hundreds of thousands of library content that we have. We have over 28 billion social and digital media views. And that's from not just the WWE corporate channels, but from all of our wrestlers have their own individual social media handles, and they will reach out to our fans directly. Think of it from a kid's perspective, as you saw in that video. One of our big things is to make kids happy. Vince McMahon's mantra is to put smiles on kids' faces. And that is genuinely what he always wants to do every single show, every single week. And when you see the kids treat these wrestlers as their superheroes, they can translate and they can actually talk to them directly through social media. And this is something that really drives the views on their social media platforms just way up. We have over, it's the #1 sports channel on YouTube, #2 overall channel on YouTube. If you go on, you'll see the number of subscribers, number of followers, number of people that are watching at the moment. As I said, we like to go where our fans are, and they are absolutely still on YouTube. We have over $1 billion global brand retail annually from our licensees. We have more than, that's actually a little bit of an older slide, we have over 200 licensees currently. We have the #1 action figure in the United States, and that's pretty big in that category. And we have $1.2 billion in social media followers. So before I file for anything, I want you to understand, first of all, what is all of our IP? What is it that I'm filing for? Okay, so it's corporate logos, corporate names, the marks, all of our show names, WrestleMania, Raw, SmackDown, and it's also our talent names, the wrestler names. If they have a career before they came to WWE and they have an established following and a character name, they assign that to us for the duration of the term that they're with us, and then when they leave with that name again. Anything that is created during the term of them being with us, we own in perpetuity. That's a lot of IP. talent don't only have one ring name. Even if they come to us with one or two, we usually create 3, 4. There's a main ring name, then there's a little side ring name, then there's a slogan that becomes associated with them. This is all our IP. We also have shirts for apparel for every one of our wrestlers. Every shirt design, every slogan, every design that's created, that is all of our IP. And of course, there's always the copyrighted photos and footage. So this is a ton of IP right now that we're talking about that we have to clear. And that is one of the reasons why I'm so grateful that we have always been, for the past 2 decades, working with Clarivate. Clarivate has been a constant, and I'm going to put Clarivate in quotes because throughout this I might call it Thompson, I might call it CompuMark, I might call it Clarivate. I think I'm getting on the Clarivate board, but it's taking a while. But they have been phenomenal. I don't have to, if I'm ordering full search, I never have to sit there and say, okay, well, I'd like it in this category, but with a focus on sports entertainment, but I do also care about the merch. No. The team that's there that's devoted to WWE product knows I can just shoot them an email, and in 5 minutes later I said, oh, the same one as you did last week for this mark? Yes, good, go. Even if they're on vacation, I know that I'm going to get an email back that says, I got it, don't worry about it. And that kind of service, that kind of vendor is something that you almost can't put a price tag on. Because when what matters is after you've paid that invoice, what customer service you're getting afterwards. And one of the reasons why we are here is because we've worked with these companies for so long that they enable us to do our work and tell the story that we tell. So we have to do clearance searches for all of these IP before we even start this slide. And this clearance work, I've heard that counterparts and other companies have turnaround times, have forms that people fill out and requests for searches, and that they actually have expectation management that they can say, well, you'll get that result in 3 days, you'll get that result for a full search in 2 weeks. We don't get that benefit at WWE. As I said many times, we're a live show. And that means they need results immediately. I tell you and kid you not that very often they're backstage and they're still writing the script for that night because they are always writing up until the minute. And God forbid something happens to one of the wrestlers on stage or backstage and they get injured and the tag team name has to change and storyline has to change. I get an email asking if the new name is appropriate, is it clear? And I really hope it is because they're about to go on in 20 minutes live and on TV. So this is where the attorney has to be not just an attorney and say, no, that is not clear, but, well, if you do this and add this word to it, you can go. Because that's really what they need. They're on their iPhones or their Blackberries, if those still work anymore, and they need an answer right away, and they need to go and hit the ground and literally go on TV. So I don't get the benefit of having the time to search and clear. But clear we must because everybody watches what we do, and that'll be a constant theme in my speech. But we do file. And why do we file? Well, we file because we want to always own the space. We don't want someone else coming in and doing what we're doing or calling themselves a wrestler by the same name that we're using. We also want to record all of our registrations with customs worldwide so that Matt can go do what he does. And we need to criminally prosecute infringers. Again, what Matt needs to do, but as you know, trademark is the groundwork. Copyright filings are the groundwork to enable you to then enforce. What's the danger if we didn't register our trademarks? Well, in the U.S., we know it's first to use, not first to file, but everywhere else in the world, you don't get the benefit. It is first to file. And we don't want to go down the road of not being able to air our pay-per-views or our licensees not being able to sell or manufacture or transfer and ship our merch. That would be very problematic, and we would lose one of the 200 licensees that we have. So what products do we file for? Well, we file trademarks for the products we're currently making and selling. That's an obvious, that's a given. Also for products that we intend to sell. Fortunately, because I work very closely with the Consumer Products Group, I know what they're thinking of working on, and I will go and file. But where do I file? So you need to file where you are manufacturing your goods, not just where you're going to sell the goods, where you're having a distribution or sale location, and almost equally as important, if not more important, where you have known counterfeit locations. We have obviously big problems in China, but we've also had big problems in Pakistan as well as Turkey. In Turkey, they've been filing for our trademarks just outright bluntly, our very fanciful logo designs they will be filing for our products. And so we have to be mindful of filing first. I do have the benefit of knowing this because although there's not a long lead time in the development of things at WWE, it's pretty quick. Obviously, there are projects that they're working on way down the line, but then there are things that really take shorter time to develop, and I'm a part of those discussions, so I know I can file ahead of time. As a result of this, the trademark portfolio is about 10,000 trademarks worldwide. But one added difficulty in doing my job, as I said, everybody kind of watches what we do, what we file, what we do everywhere, and they like to talk about it. There are these things called the dirt sheets. In the wrestling space, there are people who basically blog about every single thing that I file for. And they figure, oh, well, this must be the storyline coming for next week because Lauren Denis Midland filed for this mark, and I know this mark was used 20 years ago by this so-and-so. So when the business folks come to me and they say, oh, okay, now that this is clear, can you go file for this? I say, like, I just want you to understand, once I file, within 24 to 48 hours, it's going to become public. Are you okay with that? Oh, wait, let me hold on, let me go back. And 9 times out of 10, it's don't file yet, because WWE, if nothing else, we love a big reveal. And so finally they come back and tell me to file. Okay. So there are people that watch, and I'm used to the dirt sheets talking about what I do if we file an opposition or get opposed. I'm used to all that conversation. Sometimes the C-suite asks, okay, so what is this story in news variety about this? Well, let me explain the process of a trademark application. You go through the whole song and dance for everybody. But then sometimes people other than dirt sheets report on what you do. The next video I'm going to show you was this. The short background is one of our wrestlers called Stone Cold Steve Austin. And he has a trademark called Austin 316. And he uses it everywhere, and it started from the proverb 316, and it became his shtick. It's Austin 316. We have it on all of his clothing and everything, and we already had a trademark registration for it. But then our consumer products group came to me and said, well, we actually want to start using 316 wherever we go in our live events. And so, for example, if we're in Boise, it would be Boise 316. If we were in Dallas, it would be Dallas 316. Can we do that? And I said, well, sure, we can do that as long as we own 316. So I filed for 316. Next thing you know, Stephen Colbert.
There's also, they do a great job. There's a great news team. There's also real news in the world of religion and wrestling tonight, because the WWE has trademarked the Bible verse Numbers 316.
Yes, this is the evangelical
It is the
one.
most inappropriate case of commercializing the Bible since King Solomon's baby-sized Ginsu knives. Cut that baby in one swipe. Now, the WWE trademarked 316 refers to one of the Bible's most quoted verses, John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that those who believed in him shall not die but have eternal life. Or, as the WWE will now put it, Crashmania is running wild. Whoa, baby! Now, let me explain how all this happened. Stone Cold Steve Austin started using 316 when he beat Jake the Snake Roberts in the King of the Ring match in 1996. Roberts had been using John 3:16 as part of his entrance routine and his character. Here's what Austin said when he beat him.
Talk about your Psalms, talk about John 3:16. Austin 3:16 says I just whipped your ass.
Yeah. And this is not the first run-in Jesus has had with the WWE. Anyone who's read their Bible knows Jesus was betrayed by Judea's famous wrestling heel, Rude Judas, the betraying Judas. Well, if the WWE owns 316, we're going to have to update the way we teach the story of Jesus. So now, introducing, weighing in at 120 pounds, hailing from Nazareth, Judea, the Messiah of muscle, the Savior of steel, Jesus!
Oh, yeah! Oh, yeah, brothers and sisters. Listen up. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. You hear that, Stone Cold? I'm going to walk all over you like water. And go ahead and bring the pain, because whosoever shall smite me on my right cheek, I will turn to you the other. And then I'm going to forgive you. Oh, yeah. This is my body. This is my belt. I'm the champion of the world.
Okay, so do any of you have that result at your company when you file trademarks? No. Coincidentally and actually hysterically, this is not one of the things I was asked about by the C-suite. They found it very cool because we love PR. And so any kind of PR, and this wasn't exactly negative, is a good thing for us. And as a side note, I got the registration, so we have it. I felt like writing Stephen Colbert, but figured not to do that. So in addition to our trademark filings, which are made public, in sharp contrast, our copyright filings, which, as anybody knows who's dealt with the Copyright Office, are not public. You can't search a damn thing in the Copyright Office. You can't find what it is that's been filed for, even if it's been a two-dimensional design. You can't pull it up. You have to send somebody physically to the Copyright Office to figure out what it is. Nevertheless, you need to have copyright filings as well for statutory damages and for other things that you need absolutely to use. And we file copyright applications every single week for our program content that is voluminous. Thank goodness the Copyright Office filings are relatively inexpensive and usually just go through without being reviewed except for the logos, which they love to reject, having not have enough sufficient original material. For our WWE Network content, for all the libraries that we've purchased and all the content that we have from years and years and years ago, before I even started there 19 years ago, for acquired libraries that we purchased, for DVDs, books, and magazines. I mean, these are things that you might not realize you should be filing for. I know that copyright protection starts at the moment it's affixed to a tangible medium, but protection is stronger when you have a copyright registration. In addition, as Matt will talk about later on, it's very helpful in enforcement when sometimes a trademark just won't do. For our copyright applications and registrations, we have about 9,000 of them in the US alone. How do we protect all of this IP? Well, first of all, I make sure, because I also review all of the stuff that we put out in PR, all the press releases, the emails, the key art, posters, email blasts, everything, that our trademark symbols are appropriately placed and that they are not TM if they're not trademarks that we're claiming, but that they are Circle R if they are. I want to make sure that we're never using anybody else's IP incorrectly, and I want to make sure that our IP is standing out as IP. A lot of our marks might be considered to be suggestive, like World Wrestling Entertainment. So you need to make sure the public knows this is a trademark and you are intending to protect this IP. So we want to make sure that the symbols are accurate. In addition, we need to make sure that these marks don't become generic. I cite SmackDown because we're actually having a difficulty with that trademark. That is a trademark. It started with one of our wrestlers saying it, The Rock, in the ring. But as I said before, everything that happens during the booking contract is owned by WWE. This is one of our biggest programs on TV. It's been running for 20 years now, I think, Matt. And SmackDown is huge for us. But people like to use, the phrase is lay the SmackDown on you. But people like to say, we're going to have a SmackDown, kitchen SmackDown. We're going to have a barbecue SmackDown. Everybody uses to refer to some kind of physical competition. And actually, SmackDown is now in the Webster's Dictionary. So, of course, our communications and PR department is excited. This means we're so popular, we made it to the dictionary, and they wanted to put it in the did you know facts about WWE, and I said, This is exactly what we don't want publicizing out there because we don't want it a mark that can be used by the world. This is our IP. So we did remove it, and I did explain it, and they were okay with it, but not all happy. Now, the way that you have to protect your IP, another Clarivate service that I use is the watch notices, because we can't possibly have our counsel constantly worldwide watching all the marks that have been filed. So we have all of our key marks registered for watch notices. Is it cheap? Nothing in this world is cheap from a service anymore, but is it an infinitesimal percentage of what you would pay to actually fight to try to get a mark back? Absolutely. So completely worth it. We have to do this at all times. Ongoing obligations, domain name registrations. We don't typically like to do a lot of defensive trademark filings because we don't want our fans to not talk about us. And some of the ways that you'll find them is by having our IP in their domain name. But if they're using it in an appropriate manner, this isn't something we're going to go after. But if we do think it's going to be something that could be, for example, its own brand, we want to keep it and we want to register it immediately. And domain name enforcement. Matt will talk about this as well, but we do engage in UDRPs often when it's been registered in bad faith, and we need to protect our IP in that instance. And then licensing agreements, because once you own, as I talked about the licensees, but once you own your IP and you need to protect it, you need to license it out appropriately. You need to have hands-on approvals. You need to have very specific clauses in your agreements that talk about the confidentiality of the IP, who owns the IP, what about the IP that's created during the term of that license agreement that neither you brought to the table nor the licensee brought to the table, but that which is created during the term of the license agreement, who owns that? We like to own that because a lot of it is based on the DNA of WWE, and we need to own that afterwards. We don't want them to be able to use that with another licensee going forward. Also, we have to enable them or require them to have registered user recordals in countries that would require it so that we would get the benefit of the use. And at the end of the agreement, you have to make sure that things are returned to you. And how do you wrap up that agreement? Unfortunately, as lawyers, we always have to go into the agreement as, well, worst case scenario, what's going to happen with this agreement? If we have to get out, how do we get out and still own everything we own? And when it expires, how do we transition to a new licensee and how do we get everything back? So that's unfortunately where I come in for that end of it. But it's also a blessing because I get to see what the product is that we create. And it's part of the WWE story, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. And now on to Matt.
So Lauren and I do work very closely together, but she's the good cop, I'm the bad cop, you know. In the next couple of slides, I'm just going to give a broad overview of what an enforcement and monitoring program for a company like WWE kind of looks like. And it really starts with the anti-counterfeiting program, the sub-program that we have. In a few slides, I'm going to discuss the importance of a strong online anti-counterfeiting program. And this is really how things are starting to trend. However, any good program also needs a strong analog that deals with counterfeits on the ground. And the first step is really establishing enforcement counsel and investigators wherever you're doing business and where counterfeits are being sold. You as an either in-house counsel really doesn't need to have a perfect familiarity with the different jurisdictional aspects and the different laws, but you need to have some sort of an idea of the differences of what's happening in these different jurisdictions, and you need to really have these sorts of relationships. Lauren alluded to, we need to record the registered trademarks as well as the copyrights with the different customs entities that exist. Sometimes it's easier to record copyrights in certain jurisdictions and use that for enforcement purposes. In a couple of slides, I'm going to share a story of that as well. It's important to train business partners in both your brand and counterfeit activity. The better your partners know your brand, the better they're able to advocate on your behalf and kind of spot counterfeits and report them back to you. I can't stress enough the importance of localized enforcement training and enforcement manuals. Sending your literature to Chinese customs in English is the same thing as not doing anything at all. You really need to localize your content for these people and point out the specific counterfeit items that are at issue in those particular jurisdictions. Whereas in Pakistan, we have an issue with counterfeit WWE championship belts. That's not the case in India, where we have big T-shirt and toy issues. Those will lead to market surveys, and that kind of gives you a good idea of the scope of the problem. And it's always good to combine. Ask the counsel or investigators if you can combine with other brands to share costs. We always try to share costs wherever possible because this is an expensive game to get into. These all lead to certain raids and seizures and criminal civil charges and your resolutions of the particular matters. But it's really important to keep records in a centralized docketing and database so you can capture repeat infringers. It happens all of the time where you think you're getting rid of one, but he pops back up on the radar another time. Next couple slides, I'm going to give some examples of some seizure examples. These were some from a recent toy store in Saudi Arabia, actually. Here's some miscellaneous seizures from Italy. John from the IPR Center alluded to that, counterfeits are getting a lot better now. Even on lower priced items like toys and T-shirts. Earlier on, it was really easy to tell and spot a counterfeit. The packaging was terrible. There was misspellings all over the packaging, so it was easier to spot. But now the counterfeits, even on WWE and lower priced items, are getting better and better and better. Here's some more misspellings. Here's an example from China. Lauren alluded to, and I'm stressing again the importance of registering both copyrights and trademarks, not only with their patent and trademark offices, but also with customs. Several years ago, we had an issue in China where some entity filed in Class 16 our old WWE Scratch logo, and we were currently fighting them and win cancellation in the opposition process. But we still needed to enforce. You know, we found a warehouse with about 108,000 different trading cards, and we weren't able to enforce using our trademark rights. So this is a really important fact where you need to base your sometimes base your enforcement strategies on copyrights, and here we were able to work with the local AIC in China to seize those goods. This is another really interesting example. This was in Dongguan, China. You know, this issue started with a listing that I saw on AliExpress, and it was advertising the ability to make batches of WWE action figures in the thousands. You could order them. And usually I would see that this is an issue where the figures would usually come unbundled, not in the packaging, and you can order large batches of them. This was coming in the packaging. The screenshots actually had our hologram on it. So I knew something was up. We ran some sample purchases, and it really looked that the figures appeared legitimate. But we did a little bit of a deeper dive and even brought in our licensee Mattel to look at this sort of stuff. And it was found that this was a third shift issue. The exact same factory where we were manufacturing legitimate goods. People would go home at night, the third shift would come on, turn on the everything, and start making these goods. So we were able to shut down not only the factory, but you know, we seized about 10,000 counterfeits, and this resulted in actual criminal.
It's also important for this aspect that you make sure in your license agreements that you have parameters about who gets to enforce and whose responsibility it is to enforce. We typically do not deputize our licensees to take action, unless, of course, it involves their IP as well, but we require them to notify us and that we have the ability but not the obligation to take action. Obviously, we did, but we also require them to help us at our cost in such actions. But, I mean, Mattel's a great partner, and they worked with us really closely. Obviously, they were
very happy.
They were upset
They
about
were
this
very
as well.
happy with that, with us finding this out. You know, we not only have actual like physical product infringement, but we also, what I like to call other brick and mortar infringement. Apple has the same sorts of issues. We had an actual unauthorized WWE cafe in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. You know, they were a one-stop shop. They were selling counterfeit merchandise and also allowed patrons to watch illegal streams of WWE content. So it was pretty bad. We have John Cena Burger and Taco here in Monterrey, Mexico. This was narco territory, though, so I had to really be a little careful because my name's attached to the cease and desist letters, and I like to go down to Mexico City every now and then. So we were able to shut these guys down. This is another example in Dubai. You know, sometimes infringers really are not counterfeiting products that we make or even have the desire to make. They're just really using WWE IP as they like and see fit on products. So this was a Wonder Wheels. I guess it was a tires and rim shop in Dubai. And I'm going to pass it right over to Lauren again. She's going to talk about our program that we have with TROs and seizing merchandise at WWE events.
Thanks. This is perhaps one of my most exciting things that I do at WWE, and it's the only time where I am actually directly hands-on in enforcement. Our live events, this is one of our WrestleManias. Our WrestleMania, like I said, is like our Super Bowl. It's attended by 80 to 90, 100,000 people, depending on the venue and how many they can fit. We always actually have more people in the venue than any other event in the venue because we occupy the field, too. As you see, we only have a little space for the ring, and everybody else is a fan. They come from every single state in about 30 to 40 different countries, and we descend on whatever city WrestleMania is in that week. And we have a week long of events, a lot of fan engagement events, as well as other wrestling events that lead up to this big event at WrestleMania. So I work with law firms for months in advance, every single year, to get a TRO. And with everybody, has anybody ever touched a TRO, you know it's something that you can't get well in advance, knowing that your event is 3 months away. It can only be gotten because it's a temporary restraining order and it's an exigent circumstance. And that means it's coming up really quickly. We don't have time to actually have a lawsuit going, and we have to get it quickly. So you kind of have to file, realizing what time in front of the event you need to file, giving the judge a certain amount of time to read your complaint and to issue an order. Then you have to get your bond. God forbid they want a hearing, and a lot of judges do want a hearing, because I know, shockingly, not everybody knows what WWE is. In Miami, the judge actually asked us to have a hearing so we could explain what WWE was and what the event was and why did we need a TRO and what kind of products are sold at the events. So we did, and she gave us the TRO. But in other states, the judges just don't want the hearing. They just decide, nah, you don't need a TRO. And in fact, in New Orleans, we had this for WrestleMania, where the judge decided we didn't deserve a TRO because I didn't name the defendants in the complaint. Right, boggles the mind. I don't know what Jane and John Doe was going to come and show up at the event and sit on 3rd and Lincoln Street and selling a bootleg merch out of his trunk. I'm sorry, that's not the way the Lanham Act is written. She didn't understand this. So she denied our order. And as I said, everybody likes to talk about what WWE does. Everybody was talking about the fact that we did not get our TRO. And of course, since Vince McMahon is a big celebrity, everybody wants to talk about how the fact that he's just been beaten in the match. So what does this also send the signal out to everybody who's going to be selling bootleg merch? Come, sell it at WrestleMania. So fortunately, we did have local law that helped us in that scenario. We were able to seize some bootleg that day and then go back into court on a Saturday morning with other affidavits and others. And so she gave us the TRO as to that specific defendant. Not even those who might be working in concert with that defendant, but just that specific defendant. So of course we couldn't let this stand because we do this every year, and this could be a problem to have to explain away every single year. So we filed an appeal with the Fifth Circuit, and fortunately we won. And we had to win, or this would have been a very big loss, because this is something we need to do every single year. Because what we do is I work with local law enforcement at the event. I literally travel around in usually their golf carts, and we're undercover. And I usually work with about 10 to 15 undercover officers. In San Antonio, I worked with Homeland Security, who doesn't charge for this, by the way. They really are very, very involved in wanting to seize bootleg merchandise because it follows back to other criminal activity, and that's really where they're most interested in. They were a fantastic team, and I would work with them again in a heartbeat. But we do have a local team that then hires every local undercover officer. We work with this team, and I drive around, and we seize bootleg merchandise. We serve them with the TRO that we have. I then go back into court with the TRO, and I try to convince the judge, okay, now you've seen what we've done, you see what we get at our live event. I need a nationwide order that will allow me to serve this injunction on anybody that we seize in domestic live events, because it's going to be at every one of these events, and I'm not going to be filing these TROs at every court. This is the amount of product that we seize, and let me go back actually 2 seconds. Something important about this picture on the left with my finger in it, that's actually someone coming up to my car trying to sell me a bootleg t-shirt. They don't know who I am, and I loved it, and I have my phone down here, and I'm taking the picture of them trying to sell me the bootleg. But that's what they do. They come up to the cars. If you notice the guy in the lower left, his shirt looks a little puffy. That's because he has 30 shirts tucked into his vest. Because it's not what you think anymore. They don't put up a little stand and sell bootleg merchandise. They have to be on the run. They have to be able to walk away. They also know that you have TROs, and you don't want to have your police taking up time in arresting them. So they know that if they get stopped and they get seized, they're going to give you their 30. They're going to go back to the car wherever it's parked and pick up the next bootleg bunch of 30 and shove that in their jacket and shove that down their pants. And let me tell you, these shirts don't smell good when they're sitting in my car as I'm driving around at night. And when I go into court, and the first thing I do when I get back to my hotel room is put them in Ziploc bags so that the smell stays. So that when I go back into court, the judge can actually smell these shirts and understand what it is. This isn't just a Lanham Act issue. This is a public safety issue. The ink is false. The shirts are made of flammable material. The ink can cause asthma for the kids. This isn't just about we want to make money. We want to make these people buy legitimate shirts, because frankly, the amount of money we spend in getting the TROs never amounts to the amount of money we would make even in the volume and value of the shirts that we seize. But this could be a big amount of what we do. And this is where the judge actually said to me in Miami that I didn't think that I had the right to do the nationwide order, but now I understand after seeing these shirts, I understand the need for it. So she did give it to us.
All right, I'm really going to go fast because we're running out of time on these last couple things. Like I said, everything is moving online, but the physical seizure aspect is still important. Since 2008, we've seized over 4 million units of counterfeit product worldwide, including the stuff that Lauren seizes. It's worth about $20 to $40 million. But what's more important, I think, now is the counterfeits that we do see online. Why is that? For a multitude of reasons that were already touched on by some of the previous speakers. It's not gone are the days where the large shipments are coming at fixed points. It's just not happening as often, especially for our types of merchandise. They're being shipped, sold online in different e-commerce platforms and sold directly to the consumer. This is an easier barrier to entry. It's easier to hide, and this is a really large-scale problem. Brands need an evolving tech strategy to deal with this numbers game, and this is where Mark Monitor is a valued partner for WWE. This is kind of an overview of WWE's anti-counterfeiting program. We use Mark Monitor and another vendor to deal with things. It all trickles down to basically me, and I need to be the one that's actually pressing the button to enforce. A lot of other companies allow Mark Monitor and other vendors to enforce on our behalf, but Lauren alluded to before, we have over 200 licensees. Sometimes I can't tell what is counterfeit and what is real. I need to route this internally. So it's much better for us to actually be pulling the trigger and having results brought to us by Mark Monitor. Our other vendor is really dedicated to social media enforcement and a lot of things on the video piracy side, which I'll touch on, and the counterfeit side. Everything's moving to social media, where the ads are driving people to what we call made-to-order websites or print-on-demand websites, where these companies have zero quantities, zero inventory, and they just basically say, all right, we're popping up today because WWE has debuted a new slogan on last night's Raw. We're selling these sorts of themed t-shirts, and they're advertising on social media and driving eyeballs to their website. So those are really tough to capture, but they're creeping up. Here's our enforcement results. I think we concentrate a little bit too much on what we've removed of the quantities and the dollar amounts. But those are really fuzzy numbers, fuzzy math. Some websites actually have the amount of quantity that we can track. Other websites don't. So what we really concentrate on are the listings that we take down, the compliance rate that we take down. Surprisingly, from the difference between 2011 and 2018, we've enforced on a ton more listings every year, but the total advertised goods of the value of the goods has decreased. Why is that? Again, it's these made-to-order websites where basically there's no quantity listing. They don't even have any inventory. Our online video program overview. This probably occupies another 40% of my time versus the other 40% on the counterfeit side of the coin. We work, we have a lot of content. Lauren, talked about how much content we're generating on almost a daily basis. So we need to work with, both in-house, but with several key vendors, not just Mark Monitor, but Mark Monitor does most of the heavy lifting for us. Several years ago, we basically just enforced on what we called premium content, our pay-per-views, our home videos. We really don't do too much home video anymore. Everything is migrated to the network in 2014. So we made a decision that everything is premium at this point. We needed to come up with a very comprehensive strategy and cost-effective strategy to monitor all of our content all of the time in perpetuity. So without Mark Monitor and to be able to come up with this strategy where we now have a tiering mechanism, other vendors, these costs would have spiraled out of control. So now we're enforcing on everything all the time. This is what our anti-piracy program looks like. Over there is Mark Monitor. They're helping us with user-generated content and cyberlocker takedowns, peer-to-peer, mobile apps, search engine link results, everything that really has to do with digital video online piracy. Then we have another 4 vendors, though, that we also work with. These are highly specialized vendors. They work with, start taking down stuff on social media. We have a live stream vendor that just concentrates on things that are coming out in a live capacity. We have another vendor that helps us monetize previously unmonetized things on social media and YouTube. We have another vendor that really monitors for fraud and scams and discrimination. Lauren hinted that each one of our talent have their own social media presences. They're impersonated all of the time. They help us mitigate that sort of impersonation. They also scan the dark web. They look at sites that are trading in WWE network credentials. People are selling passwords and access to our subscription network. So we try to mitigate that as well. And our last vendor is actually on the ground, not only selling actual commercial packages to bars and restaurants so that people can go in and pay to see WrestleMania at a bar or restaurant, but then they're trying to stop unlicensed people, unlicensed bars and restaurants from actually showing this sort of stuff. Here's a little snapshot of our live stream events. In 2014, we were only really monitoring our pay-per-view events, and we shut down about 2,000 live streams with about 4.4 million potential viewers. And again, these were really fuzzy numbers on how many viewers are watching these streams. We didn't get a lot of access. Now for 2015, we've enforced on a ton more of live streams, and we can actually drill down to the actual number of actual views of these people, because most people are watching these streams on Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, Mixer, all of these different platforms that actually have view counts that we capture.
And this is viewership numbers at the moment it's being shut down.
Yep.
These are the number of views watching it.
Here's a UGC snapshot from Mark Monitor in 2012. We were only enforcing on 12 pay-per-view events. We had a very high success rate, but we were only shutting down about 227,000 infringing files. 2018, it's not as much for the pay-per-views, but now that we're enforcing on almost all of our content, everybody's infringing something at some point in time. And our takedown success rate is still around the same number. But the main takeaway here is that piracy has really moved from user-generated content and peer-to-peer to live streaming. When people want to pirate our content, they don't want to pirate something that's being broadcast live several days later. They want to be able to pirate as it's happening. One of the great things about Mark Monitor is the data that we have access to. Lauren and I work very closely with our data analytics team to really get an idea of where we can use this kind of data and how important it is. So without this sort of data, it would really be, we wouldn't get the full picture. Here's our peer-to-peer numbers. Peer-to-peer, as you can tell, has just gone down. We've moved away from, or pirates have really moved away from pirating peer-to-peer files, BitTorrent files, and moving again to live streaming. And here's some other enforcement that Mark Monitor also helps us with. In 2014, we were not monitoring for mobile app infringement, no monitoring for search engine links linking to infringing content, or Usenet. 2015 to 2018, we removed over 6,000 mobile apps, about 5 million search engine results, 4,000 Usenet binaries with pretty high success rates. And I'm just going to switch to the next slide. All these slides will be available to you guys as well if you're interested to spend a little bit more time. But Lauren's going to finish it up here.
In 30 seconds.
Yes.
So basically, in a very, very quick nutshell, believe it or not, we could talk about this for 2 or 3 hours. We love to talk about what we do. But we hope that what you've taken away from our story and our case study is that the first thing that you need to do, make sure always, if you're sitting in this room, you obviously know this already, you need to file for your trademarks and copyrights. You need to have your basis for protections that you can go and enforce. You need to engage in watching services that you know what others are doing out there, because you can't be everywhere at all times. And if you're like us and you wear 10 different hats and you have a tiny little legal department in a company that has a ton of IP, we are blessed with Vince McMahon, who understands that the bread and butter of WWE is the intellectual property. So we are blessed with a very meaningfully correct budget to be able to do all of what we do, because 2 people just can't do it. Even if we had a team of 20, we still couldn't do it. You need the right vendors who have the technological ability to do it for you and to work with you. You need a person like Matt on your team Not that I'm offering him up, because I would never let him go. But you need someone who is so passionate about what he does and understands the internet world and the intricacies of what these pirates do, so he can work with the vendor to make it the best program. Because you can't just say, okay, here's our IP and go. But here's where you're finding it. Well, maybe is this tool on this website, is this scraping tool good enough for us? Are we capturing all the data? You need to be very closely connected with that vendor. And you need to make sure, as I said earlier, you need to make sure you're with the right vendor at all times. You need to make sure that that vendor, after you sign that invoice, is still going to be responsive to your needs. We are a very demanding company. Our C-suite are very demanding. We'll get an email, why is this up in this website and why is this here? Or you know what, can you just refresh our memories as to how many sites we took down? We need to be able to have access to meaningful data, reports in a meaningful way, and if we need to change things and we need to structure things so that it works for us. Matt referred to the tiering system that we have for enforcement. Well, we plug in different tiers at different times when they're most important to us, and yet, the charging isn't going to be astronomical. These are things that a good vendor does, and these are things, and I sound like a PR for Mark Monitor and Clarivate, but that's why we're all here. We are clients of theirs, and we work with them, and we know their value, but it really is astronomically helpful to have that. And the last thing, on a daily basis, constantly review your program. The technology changes, where pirates are changes, where the counterfeit problems are always changes. You need to keep up. You need to attend conferences like this. You need to talk to your counterparts in companies and similarly situated entities. And you need to always revisit, are you with the right partner? If you are, why? Do you need to engage in more of the services that they offer? Can you eliminate some because you no longer have that as a problem? Constantly re-engage. And that's just we do on a daily basis. We are very actively involved in both the community, in coalitions, Coalition Against Online Video Piracy, IACC, on leadership at INTA. You need to be involved so that you're always kind of staying as current as you possibly can be. And I want to just thank you all for listening to our story. And if you have any questions, we'll be here for the rest of today and tomorrow. So thank you all.